still open. So if you could just go ahead and
Yeah, I
close
had
those tabs.
lots of stuff here. Okay. Hold on.
Okay, good stuff. Tama, you got my earrings on. Hold on. Community property. I want to take those with me out of town. I'll be by tomorrow to pick them up. Okay. Now that I got that all out my system, good stuff, good stuff. So, hello, good evening, happy Sunday. For those of you that are tapping in slowly but surely into our anti Black conversation, normally we do our lives on a Saturday morning or midweek, but this evening we came at a 3 o'clock on a Sunday in order to make sure that I could accommodate my big sis, Miss Donna, who was in a different time zone. But I needed to make sure she was with us. Yes, woo woo, for this particular conversation in honor of National Women's Month. Um, Not that, a month is enough. I'm sure that we should probably just go on and be given the whole year. But, we're not going to ask for much. Well, okay, maybe 10 months out of the year. Am I being greedy? Just okay. All right. Anyway, my name is Tony McNeil, and I am the host and the founder of Anti Black Conversations. And for those of you that are not familiar with Anti Black Conversations, we are a space that is created, have been up and going for a couple of years, created for the Black community. And we come in and we talk about anti Blackness. And there's anti Blackness interwoven in the DNA of any and every facet of our being in our lives. Anti Blackness in education, anti Blackness in the church, anti Blackness in marriage, in relationship, in the prison system. It doesn't matter. But the biggest part of it is that I realize that when I look in the mirror and I see things that I really just subconsciously don't even like about myself, that I hate about me, a lot of times I can really trace that back to some form of anti Blackness. I am conditioned to not like myself and the skin that I am in. And the darker the skin that I am in, the more issue that I have with that skin that I'm in. Whether I have to fight against it and work really hard in order to love me authentically and genuinely, and find the value in me, because Black by definition isn't even something good by according to Webster. We're not going to get into that. We might have to have an anti-Black conversation to talk just about the color Black and the definition, period. But today I have some amazing women with me, and I am extremely excited to lean into this conversation. The topic of our conversation is po- poetic plights. Poetic plights. I keep wanting to say poetic prose, but no, it's poetic plight. And this is about the plight of the Black woman. It's about the trials that we have gone through. Before I get into the definition of plight, I want us to introduce ourselves. And so I'm going to go around. We're going to do a popcorn style. Donna, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Remember, y'all, this is a conversation, so you don't have to be on mute, but you can if you just so choose to. But introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do, and yeah, I'll ask another question afterwards, and then popcorn to the next person.
Okie dokie. Well, I am Donna Marie. I was born and raised in Richmond, California. I'm a recent transplant from Stockton, California to Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a community activist, actress, advocate, and a creator. And I am seeking to find my space here in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I take up space pretty much wherever I go. I tend to make a space for me. I've learned to be okay with doing that. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Miss Tracy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tracy Gordine. I'm a professor of English at American River College. I was originally born in California, but then the family moved east. And then in 1978, I came back out here. I write poetry and prose and uh, do my thing at readings. And, I taught in the prisons for 10 years in order to put myself through graduate school and also raise two daughters. And so that was a very, very life changing. I didn't come into poetry until very late. I was originally a short story writer, and just the thrill of hearing the words coming off the page, really drew me away from the silence of prose. So, Tama.
Hi, everybody. I am Tama Brisbane. I am the executive director of With Our Words. I am Stockton's inaugural poet laureate since 2015. I don't know how much elasticity inaugural has once you're getting past 5 years, but nonetheless, I am inhabiting it and I am looking forward to cycling off as inaugural poet laureate and becoming the first poet laureate emerita. Now, that one I'm going to floss with. Sorry, y'all. I was born in Southern California and I spent some time, almost 20 years, on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. Um, my passion is promoting the power of voice, particularly among young people. I like when grown-ups own their stories. I particularly like when women, through the power of storytelling, uncover and acknowledge the difference between endurance and strength, because we get that shit twisted a lot. So I love doing workshops with women about the subject of what do we do when we're being called a strong Black woman, because it usually serves to do this, to mute us. I've been a number of firsts, mostly born out of confrontation or struggle or tragedy. And that is a common thread I think most Black women have in their stories. But the storytelling part, that's the joy.
So the first thing that I want to do is I want to define something, plight, the word plight, because this is the poetic plight of the Black woman. The word plight, by definition, it says it's a dangerous, difficult, or otherwise unfortunate situation. That's the definition of the word plight. A dangerous, difficult, or otherwise unfortunate situation. So before we even go into just different poetry and prose, when you guys hear poetic plight, what comes to mind for you as as authors, poets, actress? All what comes to mind when you hear poetic plight in relationship to the Black woman?
Okay, I'll start first. If you entered into college or university wanting to write, eight'll get you 10. If you weren't at an HBCU, you were given the canon of European writers. And man, I just hated poetry because it just didn't make any sense to me. I said, I was in New Jersey and in New York, and people don't talk like this over here where I'm from. And so I wasn't interested in writing it. And then when I started writing it, the dilemma was, can I use my language?
Hmm.
And it was the same experience that Toni Morrison faced, and Sherman Alexie, Native American. They didn't even know that their people wrote because it wasn't given to them. It wasn't shown to them. The first
Wow.
person who astounded me with moving away and using plight in their work was Endosake Shange, who wrote the feminist Bible of for colored girls, you know,
Mm.
right? And she took that plight, man, and she made it beautiful. And she gave permission. And it gave me permission as well. But, it made my heart pound to stand up in front of usually majority of white audience and read this stuff, you know.
Hmm.
But the practice part of the practice is finding the universality in it, you know. Um, and so that was free.
So one of the things that you said, Miss Tracy, that stands out to me is that she took the plight and made it beautiful.
Yeah,
So there's something about poetry that makes something that is difficult or dangerous beautiful. Is that what I'm hearing?
yes,
Poetry adds an element of beauty to it, makes it a little bit more palpable too, in order to tolerate or to take in, like a medicine that tastes nasty and they add a flavor to it.
that's
Tommy, you
right.
came off of you. Come on in.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, this is a conversation, and so I'm like, because you guys are going to be dropping some poetry and some prose here, and I want to make sure that folks understand that the reason why poetry is in front of the word plight when it comes to the history of the Black woman.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, the plight has been with us as a people from day one, and the addition of poetic is the thing that speaks to me because it says we're about to tell you in a way that you ain't never gonna forget.
Hmm.
Mm,
We are about to make an imprint. This is not just gonna go in one ear and out the other. It's going to stay. And no one has power and control over language like Black women. So, one of my first formative experiences with poetry, there were three. One was the seeing Raisin in the Sun on stage, but the very first book of poetry that I ever read was Nikki Giovanni's autobiography at 25. And even as a kid, like how you gonna be 25 and have the nerve to have an autobiography? But that speaks to the audacity and the genius and the power of Black women to say, yeah, I'm going to tell you all about what happened in a way that only I can. And one of my favorite pieces to this day is her ego tripping piece, because it's such a mashup of powerful language, but a gospel choir. I mean, you can't find two more formative constructs for Black women in speech and faith. And she made that thing work.
Hmm. Hmm.
what about you, Miss Donna? When you hear the word poetic in front of plight, why
Hmm.
is that significant to you as a Black woman?
It's significant to me as a Black woman because one of the things that I've often said is that it's been very important always for us to understand how to speak the Queen's language. And when we speak our language from our voice, our vantage point, and our perspective, oftentimes I even find myself as I write feeling somewhat of a noose come over come over my throat when I want to say something the way I say it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it dignified? Is it proper English? Is the grammar right? Will it be received? Is it
Mm-hmm.
uh, virtuous? You know, is it peaceful? Is it will it be well received? And all of that goes in how I present, how I present. And then if I present in a way that is not acceptable, then will I receive rejection and backlash? And will someone say over here, well, she's not educated. She doesn't know really what she's talking about. There's no true validity. She doesn't have the degree. She doesn't have the experience. I'll say this. I heard that Shakespeare was actually a Black woman. That's what I heard. I heard it. I heard it somewhere. I did. I heard it. heard it. But even when I approached that in my acting class, my professor said, well, we're not here to argue the validity of where Shakespeare came from, but I'll say he died and nobody could find any writing anywhere. I know if Tama died tomorrow, they're gonna find notebooks, they're gonna find unfinished manuscripts, they're gonna find
Well, we
all kinds of they're gonna find paper somewhere with some
There's
evidence
proof
of the
that
fact
there
that
was
this woman was right. They ain't found nothing in Shakespeare. They ain't found nothing. I'm just putting that out there. I'm just throwing it out there. I heard it was a black woman, but the truth is, though, we've learned how to be and how to present in a way that is acceptable, that shows that we are worthy of respect. And unless we do it in that manner, then
another.
we assume the position of a possible backlashing or a denigration of what it is that we're actually saying. Now we're challenged with the validity and the truth, and the veracity of what it is that we have said. And can we even listen to her? Because maybe she's a little bit dramatic. Maybe she's a little bit over the top. You know, while all the time this country, many countries, for centuries have been turned on in from white tears that we know ain't always been valid, right? That have created calamity in our communities with
Mm.
lynchings and beatings, wars, all types of stuff, because the white woman, all she has to do is drop a tear and she is heard without even opening her mouth.
Whoa.
Right? So I think of poetic plight. I think, the poetry that's in my mind, in my heart, between my legs. You know what I'm saying? We embody and we encompass a thing in a way that no one else can say that they have ever experienced, known it. And in some places, it's church. It's church to some people to hear the black woman speak,
Mhm.
you know. But my and I know we might not be here yet, but my plight, and I was just talking about this the other day, is that every time we pick up our own cause, it's bastardized, it's watered down by the fact that I got to carry this other POC and this other woman over here because we all women, and we gotta stand with the LGBTQIA plus and all of this stuff. And but what about the black woman? Something so very specific and unique about us and our experience that nobody can say that they have ever had in the history of humankind. No one. And I got to validate that to you in order for you to see it as real and to receive it and to actually pick up my plight and do something about it. Do something
Mm.
about it. Do something for me that don't benefit you. Do
Ooh.
something for me that don't benefit you. And so that's the plight for me when I think about, you know, even the poem that Bear Richards, A Black Woman Speaks. She talks about the fact that until you doing it for all of us, miss me with that, what you going through. Because what I do is a representation and it stands for humankind, for humankind. Because we always carry that in our consciousness because we birthed the babies, we breastfed the babies. The babies wouldn't even be alive, some of them, if it wasn't for them suckling at our breast. So
Mm.
I'm gonna stop right there. That's where I'm gonna stop. That's what I think about when I think about the plight,
Yeah.
the overcoming.
When I say this discussion is the discussion, Miss Tracy, I vibe off of body language and facial expressions, and you was nodding over there.
I was.
Um,
I was. I was thinking about, in my classes and my courses. I think some of those kids, they sign up for my class because they want to hear me talk to them. For
Hmm.
real.
ooh.
For real.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll shut the door. So somebody in the hall who might be passing by doesn't take what I have to say out of context. And these are some of these white children that just want
Mhm.
somebody to talk to them for real, you know. And I give them that little bit of truth. And it's interesting because in the learning community that I work with, called the Moja Saku, it's predominantly black kids, but we're starting to see all different kinds of kids signing up for these classes because they
Mhm.
want to hear the black woman speak,
Mm.
you know,
My God.
and tell them, you know. And all you got to do is just change a little inflection. And I wrote, as you were speaking, Donna, I said, yeah, putting the ing, not putting the ing at
Mhm.
the end of a word,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And that's,
Mhm.
it's a line in one of my poems, and we do that, It's like, okay, where do I put the ing and where do I leave it off, you know.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
So look, I had to put that up there for a minute. When a black woman speaks.
mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
dot dot dot. I just felt like I needed to put that there for a minute when a black woman speaks. So I mean, you all are poets, actresses. You speak poetically. Every now and again, what's a trip is that when I'm going through something, every now and again, the only way that I can get it out of me um, is to write it down, and the way that it flows out almost like poetry, or song. And I'm a songstress. I write songs and lyrics um, and different things like that. And when we were talking about poetry, I thought about Jill Scott and Rolling Hills, and I thought about Billie Holiday and Strange Fruit, right? Um,
Mhm.
and I thought about those things because when you talk about, just the plight between my legs, and a lot of times people take Jill out of context and they think that she's just super seductive and all of this because they don't sit down long enough to get to the end of her message. However, who she's speaking to, we know what she's talking about. We can relate because sister to sister, black woman to black woman, this plight that we're going through, I have to then tell myself, right, that there is power in them rolling hills, that there's something that is a little bit, hey, there's something that's going on here, and you're after
Mhm.
this thing, that I got, but I need you to know that there's so much more to me than that. And every now and again, I gotta sit on sister girl and I gotta talk to her and tell her, that you can't leave me, and so I love the is it a prose? Is that what you call it? That she gives a little interludes before she goes into song.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Man.
Mhm.
Okay, so look, y'all get to drop some stuff, and let me see. I don't know. Should I roll it, spin it around? Like, who am I gonna start with? I think I'm gonna start with Miss Tracy.
Ah, no,
Miss
when you
Tracy,
say drop something,
just whatever you want to start with. We gonna just start with something. So if you want to read something, if you want to share something, whatever it is that you want to do, but we just
let
gonna
me reach
start.
over here for a second.
Not a problem. Not a problem. And look, and I'm hoping it's
One of
something
the,
that I got some requests.
one of the first things that I had done was I was asked I was asked to write a piece for women that were locked up in the Sacramento County Jail.
Mhm.
And the predominant number of them were prostitutes that were rounded up. And this was at the height of the AIDS crisis. And they had social workers going in there trying to talk to these women about taking care of themselves and what the disease was all about and giving them pamphlets and stats, and nothing was working. So they said, Tracy, please write a poem, write something to them. And so I sat down and I wrote this. Now, I had spent time writing plays, so I put it in the voice of this woman. This is called Backside of an Endless Day. He was a nice man, clean smelling and pretty, got fancy words flowing tween his lips, and I sat transfixed. I wanted him so bad. Shrugging off the tap, the touch a girlfriend's hand. I'm trying to see something here more interesting than her, than all those same Saturday nights. I wanted him so bad. We go
Mm.
to the bar, feel the music and gin picking up speed, hoping for something out of all of that smoke, all of that shadow. Now I'm trying to see something here in that pretty man's eyes. He was so full of me, taking me in as I leaned in closer. I wanted him so bad. Cause he's like sunsets I ain't never seen before, full of them colors bursting, sinking down the backside of an endless day, dragging all of my boredom away. I wanted him so bad. So I go off with him. His music, words from up high, because he was talking about me. Pretty mama, sexy lady, sweet, sweet girl. He's found a brand new universe in me, holding me close, drugging me with his sleepy eyed, slow breathing down my neck. I wanted him so bad. Laying me down like I'm great grandma's gold spun cloth, shimmering fine and ready for company. Ready, I'm ready. Suddenly beautiful and rare, a treasure, his dream coming true. I wanted him so bad. But like a fool in greed, he was ready to sit down to feasting on me without his dinner jacket on.
Mm.
Bare naked, eager, ready to launch on into me, killing me with himself. Up on one elbow, my arm shot out with a stop. You aiming that at me? You shooting to kill? So long, baby, and bye bye. You may be pretty with them sparkling eyes. You may be fine. I wanted you so bad. But without that essential dinner jacket, you have lost your charm. Alive and awake, I run free, smoothing my hair and clearing my vision. Straight back to girlfriend and those Saturday reruns. To myself, I smile quiet, knowing I never needed you that bad.
Mm. Mm.
And so that was at the county jail. And the women just, oh, yes. Somebody was talking to him for real.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Oh, I love that. I wanted him so bad.
I
I
wanted it
felt
so
that.
bad.
Oh, I
This is
wanted him.
this is why I heart me some Tracy.
And I mean that goes. I wrote that for those women, but I've read that to the first time I read that piece, I tried it out on senior citizens. They were having this thing at a rest home somewhere, and they were writing these. There were people, the poets were reading these polite little flower poems and stuff. I said, hell, I said, do you know these people have had a life? Let me try this here poem on. They really appreciated it. So they
Oh,
gave me the nod that it was good, it was okay, and so I took it to
ooh,
the jail.
ooh, ooh. I like that. I like that one a lot, a lot, a lot. I had to actually, Donna, I had to change my I had to change, so I have a look. You asked, Donna smiling because you. Miss Tracy, I had to change, and this is that we get to just kind of go in and out from this because this is what this is today. I had to change my pen. So I have a couple of pens, right? I have the prophetic pearls, and that's the church girl me, where I'm just making sure that, I'm dropping wisdom, before the most holy saints of God, so that they're not clutching their pearls, but they're receiving the pearls that are being laid amongst them. And then I have my pen that is writing is therapeutic, and that's when Tony is talking to Tony,
Mhm.
and healing herself, and anything that I'm healing from, I feel like healing should flow coming and going. And so if I'm healing, somebody coming in contact with me should heal as well. Otherwise, it's not really healing that's taking place. But then there's Black Moon. And I do a hashtag depending on just what mood I'm in. And so when you were writing that, It made me think of Black Moon, and something that I had written a while back, and I kept looking at the different um, the different images of a black man,
Mm.
and the way that I like, and I put all of these different images up. And definitely look, y'all. For y'all that is watching, I'm among legends, y'all. For real, like these women are like legends. This is what they do. So I just get permission to sit amongst them, and so that's sacred to me. But this is called the essence of a black man. A lot of this stuff I'm gonna give to Donna so she can figure out what the heck to do with it, especially the black moon stuff, because Donna can handle my black moon. He is the very essence of a black man, with skin dark like molasses and smooth like chocolate. He exudes strength and confidence, poised in the very eloquence and fluidity of his words, character, posture, and movement. He stands as tall as the oldest mighty oak tree, providing the shade of a strong covering, protection, provision, rooted in wisdom and grace. He draws water from the depths of my well, always tapping into and making demands on the gifts, skills, talents, and treasures hidden within the cracks of my earthen vessel. He ignites my imagination to see far beyond the now and explore the possibilities of the what could be. He challenges me intellectually to be fully present and strive for excellence, to be better and do better, to listen and learn, and at the feet of his experience. Oh, y'all, he stimulates me, mind, body, and soul, carefully giving space to color outside the lines, exploring facets of myself that have been kept under lock and key. Yeah, he caresses me with his eyes, with one look, igniting my flame, the fire that sets my nerves, my skin, my nipples on end. He touches me from a distance with the wind of his breath on my body, leaving the residue of his presence glistening in seclusion in my secret places. He makes me feel sexy, sensual, seen, and satisfied, unlocking sensuality I've been afraid to express or never explored. He generates a physiological and psychological reaction from my body just from a thought, causing me to openly blush in public and private places. He is the very essence of a black man, and to me, he is beautiful.
Oh. So, who inspired that poem?
Ooh, I can't tell you.
I know, and you know, when we go to those places, we do have some memory or someone in
Hmm.
mind in order to bring
Yeah.
it there. Yes.
Yes, I have a muse. I have a muse. Yes, I have a muse. All right, Donna Tama, who going next? We just dropping stuff right now, just because we can.
I'll go next. I'm in my poet laureate mode, and one of the tasks of a poet laureate is to introduce new works to current audiences. And this is a work from someone who I was privileged to know for quite some time. And I was astounded that more people weren't aware of this poem. But when I dropped it on a few people, say, this is how you broaden your poetic horizons. This one, this poem is a mantra and so apropos to what we're talking about, the plight, the poetic plight of Black women. This is from my good friend Laini Mataka, and it is the strong. Being a strong Black woman can get you killed.
Oh.
Yes, Tony, I'm doing that one.
Okay, wait. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
This to me, this says poetic plight, up one page and down the other. On
Woo.
April 25th, 1997, at 11:55 p.m., while struggling with the reality of being a human instead of a myth, the strong Black woman passed away without the slightest bit of hoopla. Medical sources say she died from naturally oppressive causes, but those who knew her and used her know that she died from being silent when she should have been screaming, smiling when she should have been raging. She died from being sick and not wanting anyone to know because her pain might inconvenience them.
Mm.
She died from an overdose of other people clinging on to her when she didn't even have energy for herself. She died from loving men who didn't love themselves and could only offer her a crippled reflection. She died from raising children alone and being criticized for not doing a complete job. She died from the lies her grandmother told her mother and her mother told her about life, racism, and men. She died from being sexually abused as a child and having to take that truth everywhere she went, every day of her life, exchanging the humiliation for guilt and back again. She died from being battered by someone who claimed to love her, and she allowed the battering go on to show that she loved him too. She died from asphyxiation, coughing up blood from secrets she kept trying to burn away instead of allowing herself the kind of nervous breakdown she was entitled to, but only white girls could afford.
Mm.
She died from being responsible because she was the last rung on the ladder and there was no one under her she could dump on.
Mm.
The strong Black woman is dead. She died from the multiple births of children she never really wanted, but was forced to have by the strangling morality of those around her. She died from being a mother at 15 and a grandmother at 30 and an ancestor at 45. She died from being dragged down and sat upon by unevolved women posing as sisters. She died from pretending the life she was living was a Kodak moment instead of a 20th century post-slavery nightmare. She died from tolerating Mr. Pitiful just to have a man around the house.
Mm.
She died from lack of orgasms because she never learned what made her body happy, and no one ever took the time to teach her. And sometimes when she found arms that were tender, she died because they were the same gender. She died from sacrificing herself for everybody and everything when what she really wanted to do was be a singer, a dancer, or some magnificent other. She died from lies of omission because she didn't want to be accused of bringing the Black man down. She died from race memories of being snatched and raped and snatched and sold and snatched and bred and snatched and whipped and snatched and worked to death. She died from tributes from her counterpart, who should have been matching her efforts instead of showering her with dead words and empty songs. She died from myths that wouldn't allow her to show weakness without being chastised by the lazy and the hazy. She died from hiding her real feelings until they became monstrously hard and bitter enough to invade her womb and breasts like angry tumors. She died from always lifting something, from heavy boxes to refrigerators. The strong Black woman is dead. She died from the punishments received from being honest about life, racism, and men. She died from being called a bitch for being verbal, a dyke for being assertive, and a whore for picking her own lovers.
Mm.
She died from never being enough of what men wanted or being too much for the men she wanted. She died from being too Black and died again for not being Black enough. She died from castration every time somebody thought of her as only a woman or treated her like less than a man. She died from being misinformed about her mind, her body, and the extent of her royal capabilities. She died from knees pressed too close together because respect was never a part of the foreplay that was being shoved at her. She died of loneliness in birthing rooms and aloneness in abortion centers. She died of shock in courtrooms where she sat alone, watching her children legally lynched. She died in bathrooms with her veins busting open with self-hatred and neglect. She died in her mind, fighting life, racism, and men, while her body was carried away and stashed in a human warehouse for the spiritually mutilated. And sometimes when she refused to die, when she just refused to go out like that, she was killed by lethal images of blonde hair, blue eyes, and flat butts, rejected to death by the OJs, Quincy's, and Portiers. Sometimes she was stomped to death by racism and sexism, executed by high tech ignorance while she carried the family in her belly, the community on her head, and the race on her back. Well, the strong, silent, shit taken Black woman is officially dead. Will the real queens please rise?
Wow. Who is that again?
That is Laini Mataka. She is a poet out of Baltimore. She lives in DC. She was one of the first poets to be published by Carl Potz's press, Third World Press.
Wow.
And she's got several. I'm going to put it in the chat, her name.
I mean, that was history, all of it. That's
all of it.
We can all go now.
That is the anthem for me. You know, I like to book in my readings and my introduction of other poets about Black women. I like to either start with Laini and end with Lucille Clifton, because you've got the long form and then the very short and elegant, but both paying very close attention to the plight of Black women and using their pens and their voices to put it out in the atmosphere. And it's the splash and the ripple, 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 ripple.
Oh, it's amazing.
Isn't that an amazing piece?
Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
I love introducing that piece.
You know, it reminds me of Melissa Harris Perry's book, Sister Citizen. Have you heard of it? Sister Citizen.
I have. I love me MHP.
Oh, when she's talking about those very things in there, the psychological impact on African American women in being the strong Black woman, or being perceived as Jezebel, or being Mamie, Mammy, Sapphire, all of it. It's a fascinating book. Fascinating.
Let me come off of mute. Miss Donna, you got anything that you ready to share? That right there almost had me in tears, y'all. So that was like.
Actually, I have that one on deck. So, Tom and I tend to be like-minded people, so I'm going to have to pull another one. Pull it on out. And I do. I actually have Bea Richards, The Black Woman Speaks of White Womanhood. And one thing I like about this particular piece is that it comes on the heels. I want to say that it was a women's rights convention that she was invited to. And she wrote this specifically for them, and just to show that since the time of slavery, so much has not changed. So this is a Black Woman Speaks of White Womanhood, and it's quite lengthy as well. A Black woman speaks of white womanhood, of white supremacy, of peace. It is right that I, a woman Black, should speak of white womanhood. My fathers, my brothers, my husbands, my sons die for it, because of it. And their blood chilled in electric chairs, stopped by hangman's noose, cooked by lynch mob's fire, spilled by white supremacists' mad desire to kill for profit, gives me that right. I would that I could speak of white womanhood as it will and should be when it stands tall in full equality, but then womanhood will be womanhood, void of color and class, and all necessity for my speaking thus will be past, gladly past. But now, since 'tis deemed a thing apart supreme, I must in searching honesty report how it seems to me. White womanhood stands in bloodied skirt and willing slavery, reaching out adulterous hand, killing mine and crushing me. What then is this superior thing that in order to be sustained must needs feed upon my flesh? How came this horror to be? Let's look to history. They said, the white supremacists said, that you were better than me, that your fair brow should never know the sweat of slavery. They lied. White womanhood too is enslaved. The difference is degree. They brought me here in chains. They brought you here willing slaves to man. You, shiploads of women, each filled with hope that she might win with ruby lip and saucy curl and bright and flashing eye him to wife who had the largest tender. Remember? And they sold you here even as they sold me. My sisters, there is no room for mockery. If they counted my teeth, they did appraise your thigh and sold you to the highest bidder, the same as I. And you did not fight for your right to choose whom you would wed, but for whatever bartered price that was the legal tender, you were sold to a stranger's bed in a stranger land. Remember? And you did not fight. Mind you, I speak not mockingly, but I fought for freedom. I'm fighting now for our unity. We are women all, and what wrongs you murders me and eventually marks your grave, so we share a mutual death at the hand of tyranny. They trapped me with a chain and gun, they trapped you with lying tongue. For lest you see that fault, that male villainy that robbed you of name, voice, and authority, that murderous greed that wasted you and me, he, the white supremacist, fixed your minds with poisonous thought. White skin is supreme, and therewith bought that monstrous change, exiling you to things. Changed all that nature had, ill you wrought of gentle usefulness, abolishing your spring, tore out your heart, set your good apart from all that you could say, think, feel, know to be right, and you did not fight, but set your minds fast on my slavery, the better to endure your own. 'Tis true, my pearls were beads of sweat, wrung from weary bodies' pain. Instead of rings upon my hands, I wore swollen, bursting veins. My ornaments were the whiplash, a scar, my diamond, perhaps a tear. Instead of paint and powder on my face, I wore a solid mask of fear. To see my blood so spilled, and you, women, seeing, spoke no protest, but cuddled down in your pink slavery and thought somehow my wasted blood confirmed your superiority. Because your necklace was of gold, you did not notice that it throttled speech. Because diamond rings bedecked your hands, you did not regret their dictated idleness. Nor could you see that the platinum bracelets which graced your wrists were chains binding you fast to economic slavery. And though you claimed your husband's name, still could not command his fidelity. You bore him sons, I bore him sons. No, not willingly. He purchased you. He raped me. I fought, but you fought neither for yourselves nor me, sat trapped in your superiority and spoke no reproach, consoled your outrage with an added diamond brooch. Oh God, how great is a woman's fear who for a stone, a cold, cold stone, would not defend honor, love, or dignity. You bore the damning mockery of your marriage and heaped your hate on me, a woman too, a slave more so. And when your husband disowned his seed that was my son and sold him apart from me, you felt avenged. Understand, I was not your enemy in this. I was not the source of your distress. I was your friend. I fought. But you would not help me fight, thinking you helped only me. Your deceived eyes, seeing only my slavery, aided your own decay. Yes, they condemned me to death, and they condemned you to decay. Your heart whisked away, consumed in hate, used up in idleness, playing yet the lady's part, estranged to vanity. It is justice to you to say your fear equaled your tyranny. You were afraid to nurse your young, lest fallen breasts offend your master's sight, and he should flee to firmer loveliness. And so you passed them, your children, on to me, flesh that was your flesh and blood, that was your blood, drank the sustenance of life from me. And as I gave suckle, I knew I nursed my own child's enemy. I could have lied, told you your child was fed till it was dead of hunger, but I could not find the heart to kill orphaned innocence. For as it fed, it smiled and burped and gurgled with content, and as for color, knew no difference. Yes, in that first while I kept your sons and daughters alive, but when they grew strong in blood and bone that was of my milk, you taught them to hate me. Put your decay in their hearts and upon their lips, so that strength that was of myself turned and spat upon me, despoiled my daughters and killed my sons. You know I speak true, though this is not true for all of you. When I bestirred myself on freedom and brave Harriet led the way, some of you found heart and played a part in aiding my escape. And when I made my big push for freedom, your sons fought at my son's side. Your husbands and brothers too fell in that battle when Crispus Attucks died. It's unfortunate that you acted not in the way of justice, but to preserve the Union, and for dear sweet pity's sake. Else, how came it to be with me as it is today? You abhorred slavery, yet loathed equality. I would that the poor among you could have seen through the scheme and joined hands with me. Then we, being the majority, could long ago have rescued our wasted lives. But no, the rich becoming richer could be content, while yet the poor had only the pretense of superiority and sought through murderous brutality to convince themselves that what was false was true. So with KKK and fiery cross and bloody appetite set about to prove that white is right, forgetting their poverty. Thus the white supremacists used your skins to perpetuate slavery. And woe to me, woe to Willie McGee, woe to the 7 men of Martinsville, and woe to you. It was no mistake that your naked body on an Esquire calendar announced the date, May 8th. This is your fate if you do not wake to fight. They will use your naked bodies to sell their wares, though it be hate, Coca-Cola, or rape. When a white mother disdained to teach her children this doctrine of hate, but taught them instead of peace and respect for all men's dignity, the courts of law did legislate that they be taken from her and sent to another state to make a Troy Hawkins of the little girl and a killer of the little boy. No, it was not for the womanhood of this mother that Willie McGee died, but for a depraved, enslaved, adulterous woman whose lustful demands denied, lied, and killed what she could not possess. Only 3 months before, another such woman lied, and 7 black men shuddered and gave up their lives. These women were upheld in these bloody deeds by the President of this nation, thus putting the official seal on the fate of white womanhood within these United States. This is what they planned for you. This is the depravity they would reduce you to, death for me, and worse than death for you. What will you do? Will you fight with me? White supremacy is your enemy and mine, so be careful when you talk with me. Remind me not of my slavery, I knew it well, but rather tell me of your own. Remember, you have never known me. You've been busy seeing me as white supremacists would have me be, and I will be myself, free. My aim is full equality. I would usurp their plan, justice, peace, and plenty for every man, woman, and child who walks the earth. This is my fight. If you will fight with me, then take my hand and the hand of Rosa Ingram and Rosalie McGee, and as we set about our plan, let our wholehearted fight be peace in a world where there is equality. And that is that.
Ooh.
And that's why once you see Bea Richards on stage saying this in her own voice, you understand you cannot turn back from the magic of poetry in the mouth of a Black woman. It is a master key to unlock the desire to gain some degree of autonomy and excellence in your own self-expression, to own your story by owning this language that was imposed upon us. We don't have any other language to fall back on, so we had no choice but to become proficient in this one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put the chat. I'm gonna put the link in the chat to the.
I put it in there.
Oh, I have, yes,
Oh,
I have it. I'm gonna drop it in just a minute.
okay. I was putting in the link to her reading her poem.
It's in that link.
It's in that link. Okay. Well
Yeah.
then it's done. Well
I
then,
got you, baby mama.
all right. Well, we're
So,
like to call it baby mom, y'all.
so look, I have a request. Miss Tracy, you know I have a request. I have requested you. You did three poems that oh my gosh. Like, and so I loved all three of them. But before I ask for the other two, my favorite has to do with the pets.
The dog poem.
Yes, ma'am. So Miss Tracy.
My mom. Dig it out. Uh, it's interesting because it's usually right at my fingertips here.
I'm toasting this poem in advance.
Woo! Oh my God. I dedicate this to every woman.
Ah! This.
Every woman who has to fight this bloodless coup.
Yes, there it is. Uh, it's really interesting because my parents are married to each other 3 times. Uh, they eloped, and then my mother's mother wanted a wedding, and they had it there, and then the other grandmother wanted a wedding, and they had it there, and then they divorced, and then they married in Vegas. So it was quite a story those guys had. But I never saw them argue. And we never felt a thing in terms of, my father being not very honorable. And my mother is Bajan, West Indian. And in that, you are taught to always be a proper woman. West Indian women, they don't yell, they don't cord their necks. They figure out ways to get even with a man. And they can be pretty lethal, these women. But there it is. Love's bloodless coup. Did I ever tell you the story of how my mother stopped trying to please her man, my father? Did I mention that in all the years that I saw her in full revolt, that I had no idea I was witnessing a bloodless coup? It occurred in the 60s at the time of pastel dresses and little hats that looked like iced pastries, when women always wore pumps and spotless kid gloves to the grocery store. They smiled pleasantly, minded their men, never questioned the advice of doctors, preachers, policemen, or the logic of any man with the title Mr. It wasn't until I was grown, married, with 2 children of my own, that I realized how my mother, sitting in the dark, smoldering, and smoking a cigarette, eventually came up with a way to war with a man without raising her voice or slamming a door. She brought home a purebred German Shepherd puppy that came complete with pedigree papers. This pot-bellied, floppy-eared bundle that rapidly grew to pure muscle and bark was officially titled and registered as Mr. Gordine. My mother named this dog after my father because he tended to wander. And despite her attempts at reason, debate, or adjustment, my father continued to act badly, so she called him Dog. Still, he wandered, coming home long after midnight. So my mother purposefully left Mr. in the garage, loaded and waiting like a missile. And when Dad would finally open that garage door to slip inside the house, out would bolt big goofy Mr., wild and free, sprung like my father, off from home. Mr. crossed boundaries he did not belong, through backyards, laundry lines, taking the time to roll in some stinking mess. And my father, exhausted from his own romps, chased and chased that dog through the neighborhood for a good hour. My mother laughed, cloaked behind curtains, watching my father and Mr. Gordine zigzag the yards in early dawn. Next came a new dog, a sweet doe-eyed, purebred German shepherd with registered papers. My mother carried her home in a basket and set her to the floor where we, my brother and sisters, and I, oohed and awed over the puppy who replaced Mr., who became too big, too strong to stay.
Mm.
A female, a bitch, my mother whispered. What shall we call her? You won't have to come up with a name, my mother informed. Her name is Mistress. It's on the papers here. Mistress! Mistress, we called, racing through that house. My father came home to find us beaming in love with a puppy licking our faces. Mistress! Mistress, we screamed, running past my father when he came in the door. And my mother simply smiled, poised and serene, while my father tried to gather his composure, standing there with his coat half on and his fedora tilted like a question mark. There was nothing he could do in response. In time, the puppies that followed became more specific. All females, all bitches, and each carried the message my mother was aware. And we would set up the gleeful screams of my father's newest. Miss Brown! Miss Brown! My mother warred this way for over a decade. The children never knew until they had dogs of their own. This is how you fight what can never be won. This is how you let war rage in a house of children, in a house of dogs. It's a true story.
Oh gosh.
I'd like to make a comment. Something I've said for years, even a loyal dog will run off and go down the street and around the corner and come back home.
Hmm. Yeah, there was no woman that was ever a match to my mom. Ever.
Tracy, I have a question, and I am not even sure as to the propriety of the question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Did your father ever hear this poem?
I think I wrote it after his death
Okay.
in 2012. I did. I wish they were here, so that I could ask those direct questions. But I don't know, even if they lived to be 150, if I would think it would be polite for me to ask such a question. But it was amazing what my mother put up with. And and the hard thing about it is is that I was a daddy's girl. I mean, I adored my father. And my mother was raised only up until like a high school education, and then she went from my grandmother's house to my father's bed. And she had so many dreams. She longed for independence. She had four quick kids. She said I had one in arm, two on either side of my skirt, and one in a stroller, and that's how I moved through the world. That's a direct quote from my mother,
My God.
you know. And I always said that my sisters and I, we lived the life that my mother always wished for, to be independent, to love hard a man, but to have her own front damn door, you know. But she never let on, you know. Yeah.
There was something that you said that I just want us to unpack. No woman was ever a match for your mother.
Right.
I want to unpack that for a moment because I feel that as women, and as Black women, that just seems something that it's something passed down, you know, and my daughters combat that, the generation, my daughters combat that. Um, what does that mean? That no woman, because I want to add a word that says no other woman was ever a match. But that would be me adding my word. So you said no woman.
Was a match.
Yeah.
My mother, she was a very specific person. She never did try to fall into some template of what, but she had few options. See, the times that she was raised in and the culture that she was raised in gave her few options, but she stayed her own person. Oh God, she was frighteningly gorgeous. Her beauty was scary. And it wasn't a manufactured, she had to take all this time to do all this stuff. But there were a lot of rules, and I called it Bejan beauty, you know, where you sit in a chair and you don't let your back touch the back of a chair, and it's just a way of being. And I looked over and I thought, I looked at my brother and my father and I said, they don't have to sleep in curlers. They don't have to wear stockings in 95-degree weather. And I thought, I had a choice. I thought I had a choice. Like, uh, I think I'm just going to use my mind. I don't get worried about my nails or any of that stuff. But my mother could take, you know, they had very little at the beginning, but she could take and make beauty out of nothing, you know, and make serenity all the time. And I think that while he went racing about getting his ego filled, Ma, she didn't feed his ego, you know. She didn't cater to all of that. She was herself the whole time. That's what I mean. There was no other woman like her. And I think that's why he knew home was there, you know. Um, I thought I learned a lot from him.
Hmm.
I know now that as a mother and a grown woman, that I didn't know how much I was learning from her.
Mm, mm, yeah.
I have a daughter who's coming to that same realization, and she's a daddy's girl for real. But when she thinks about her life and truly thinks about like the trauma and the drama versus who was pouring into her and giving her an example and showing her love and truth and honor, respect, she can look back and she's still a daddy's girl. She'll still be like, I love my daddy. That's her man. But she has called me more since she's had her baby and said thank you than she ever said all the teenage years that I was there to raise her and give her guidance. And we would do this all the time. But I tell you the truth, now she appreciates, and her lenses are being cleaned.
Ask her to, and I don't know if she's ever said it to you, but ask her if she's ever heard your voice coming out of her mouth when she's talking to her kids. Ask her, because
I
I
can
hear
ask
my
her that.
mother sometimes, and I'm, you know,
Yeah.
you know, do you
You
guys?
know, I would say that I know that she does.
Yeah,
Mm.
I would say that she's just like me all over again,
yeah,
and herself all at the same time.
yeah. And do you hear your mother? Did you hear your mother?
My mother didn't raise me, but I tell you, I hear my grandmother's voice often.
Here's the woman who raised you. That's
I
right.
hear my grandmother's voice often,
That's
So
right.
and
look, and
so yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead, Donna, and finish that. I don't want to.
Oh no, I just that's when I hear the voice of a woman in terms of giving me love and guidance.
Yeah,
It's those things that my grandmother used to say to me that I can hold on to and reach back and say, "Oh, my granny said this," you
that's
know, and something that I truly understand more than anything in this day is when she would say, "You gonna rue the day that I die when you
yeah.
find out all of what I'm telling you is the truth."
And when you have children, I'm gonna laugh.
Oh Lord, I can't stand that. Look, yes, that. So, and as we're saying these things, and I'm listening to all of the different things that you guys have read and said, um, um, I so like I said, sometimes I read. This is like the therapeutic me. So this is like the not the prophetic pen, not Black Moon. This is writing is therapeutic, and it's not a poem. It's just sometimes I sit down and sometimes I just write because I'm trying to process.
Mm.
But when I read this first paragraph, I'm like, this is me processing. Says it felt like a dream. This is called inherent bondage, aspired freedom.
Mm.
It felt like a dream. And for a moment, as if viewing on the big screen of a movie cinema, I could see the entire scene playing out in my mind. In one area of the house, my daughter frantically runs up and down the hallway crying and pleading for her father to stop. In the master bedroom, my newborn son frightfully wails from his bassinet, helpless and unattended. And under the table in the dining room, I lay brutally beaten, semi conscious, awaiting the next blow from my husband, who towers over me in a rage, holding a chair over his head while screaming obscenities. It is within this moment I remember I've seen this movie before. Haven't read this in a while, y'all. I am reacting a similar scene from a movie I witnessed as a child, except then the leading roles are portrayed by my parents. I then came to the most horrifying realization that it was only a matter of time before both my son and daughter learned how to act out their assigned roles in this cycle of domestic violence. On that night, I decided I would break free of my current inherent ascribed status and do whatever necessary to attain and achieve status of a life free from domestic violence. Pause there. So, as I was writing this, and I don't know whether Miss Tracy, because you English teachers just have a way of making us do some stuff. So this is probably something that I wrote years ago as an assignment. Um, it was some type of an assignment that I was given from one of my English teachers when I was in like I think it might have been English 101 or something. Um, and um, and so as I was leaning into this and writing this, um, what I didn't realize is that I was working my way out. I was working my way out, Tama. And so when you say change your language, change your life, writing is therapeutic, right? And I was working my way out of some stuff, but Donna, I didn't realize it in the moment. I didn't realize it until I reflect back. So I wanted to pause there for a moment before going any further because as we are saying, it wasn't that I was saying or repeating, but literally, I was literally in that moment in time realizing that I was playing out the scene that I learned, and I was literally casting roles for my children to take on the scenes that they were learning. Tama, you over there? What you smiling about?
Mostly thinking about returning over and over again to the theme about poetic plight of Black women and how we have, if nothing else, resorted to the one thing we always had control over was our speech.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about all the times that a Black woman's speech will shift the landscape of a family or a culture or a country. And and I'll go back again through a language that has been imposed on us. This is not our mother tongue, but we have gained such mastery over using this grafted on gift to create spaces of resistance and that well-worn trope resilience, um, and of self-awareness and self-acknowledgement and self-esteem when we didn't have anything else but the words.
Yeah.
And I think of what a miracle we are to
Hmm.
be able to do that over and over and over again. If it wasn't Sojourner, Ain't I a Woman? If it wasn't Barbara Jordan, if it wasn't Shirley Chisholm, if it wasn't, I mean, we can call the roll and we will be here until the end of time of Black women whose words shifted the acknowledgement of our plight and the ability of us to acknowledge and begin to push back. Donna, I'm going to take you back. Donna and I once did a domestic violence workshop at the Women's Center, and we used nothing but poetry. And there was this one evening where, because the most important thing, one of the most important things about the epidemic of domestic violence is for women to be able to say, "This happened to me."
Hmm.
You break the silence by saying, "This happened to me." And one night in creating a workshop about this happened to me and what is it you want to say about your abuser, and we introduced a technique called sequential adjectives because we got them to call out who their abuser was and what qualities he either did have or did not have. And oh my God, we came out with trifling, no job having, mama, car busted, hoeing. I mean, the sequence just kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer. But as women added to the sequence of adjectives, you could see them gaining power, gaining breath, uh, gaining just the ability to, by naming it, you can start to cut it away. Like once you name your mountain, it ain't that much of a mountain anymore. And if you give your mountain a bum ass name like Aloysius, who the fuck is scared of a mountain named Aloysius? Not nobody. And so I think about that, and I think about the genius of Tracy's mother just by affixing two words in a language that isn't ours to turn the tide of her having to live through the constant pain and humiliation of a husband that's out there wandering the streets. How do you do that and not damage your children? Because that's the other burden that's placed on our tongue, which is express it, but not in a way that how many types of people do we not have to offend being Black women and our speech? We don't want to upset the children. We don't want to set off the husband. We don't want to seem as being too dogmatic. We don't want to be seen as
Mhm.
too angry by the larger culture. Our tongue has to navigate so many paths
Mm.
expertly, and you don't get another chance. There is
Wow.
something truly miraculous when we open our mouths. And ma'am, yeah, and I make a distinction because as misogynistic as the church, the Black church is, and make no mistake, it's baked in. How much more misogynistic, Tracy, was the rise of the Black Panther Party and the Black Renaissance and Pan-Africanism? There was some bone deep misogyny baked into those movements that
Sure.
was on par and sometimes worse than the misogyny that we experienced in the Black church. And we had to navigate that too with nothing but wit
Our word.
and our speech. I mean, I stay in awe of us. And I
Mm.
know why the country stays in fear of us.
Yeah,
Mm. Mm.
so true.
Mm.
Absolute truth.
So that's what I was over here thinking.
And what is really interesting about it that I've learned recently that I never realized is that each of us was in the womb of our grandmothers.
Mm.
In that our mother is in our grandmother's womb, but we were inside our mother.
Oh my God.
And so there is that collective memory that's in.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my.
what grandma was going through fed into mom, and what mom, you know, fed into us. And I think of my daughters who were inside of me as a little girl, you know,
Mm.
and inside of them was my grandson. And so what trauma or whatever sounds we heard
Yeah.
all comes forward in it. And talking to you guys today, I realized I never saw my mother cry ever, not once. When did she cry? I would like to have been now to ask her that, Ma. Did you go in the shower and run it? You know, when did you weep? She never let us see her cry.
That right there is so powerful because the silencing of us in the midst of that pain, not even being able sometimes to articulate, and all you can maybe do is cry or you know, and you take that into the shower or to the park or on the on the written pad, while you are working through these tears that are falling on your paper, making them uh, wrinkle from the water. That's powerful.
And then,
Mm.
at the same time, she's playing out that strong black woman thing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And it's killing her.
yeah.
And then she had these four babies that she had to, she didn't want them to see her distressed or sad or
Mhm.
angry because it's unbecoming, you know.
I
So
think
talking about, go ahead.
I think what I so appreciate about this particular panel of women is that, you know how I always say your parents are going to teach you two things: what to do or what not to do. And each one of us in our fields, in our passions, and in our paths are very intentional about uplifting young women to be able to own their stories and call out things that don't belong to them, call out, no, you don't even get to read my journal, much less add to it. I got this.
Mhm.
Thank you. And we've all stood in the gap for young women to be able to say whatever the fuck they want to say,
Right.
because we've all empowered them with a range of expression.
Mm.
And I, I think that's one of the coolest things about this square that I'm seeing on my screen is that there is self-expression in the DNA of everybody's path and gifting and forward movement. It is about, you get to say this. And if you don't know how, here's someone who kind of did it the way I want you to take a look at. Or here are my words. You can borrow them until you get your own. Or here's someone who said something no one else is going to tell you. So let me shut this classroom door real quick because
Right.
I got to drop on you.
Right.
Take it home and then we'll talk about it later and I'll shut the door again. Or I'm going to show you how to take this on stage and make a whole audience hush and pay attention to
Mhm.
what I'm empowering you to say, or I'm about to take you into the streets and go into the suites and the offices of the power brokers, and you get to say this to them like this. You
Yes.
get to hold them accountable. And for the women that are listening, and even the men, just know this is some sacred work. This is some
Ooh.
sacred work. It ain't over because Tracy and I can both tell you that what we're seeing today has echoes.
Mhm.
Like we can go back and touch the parallel between what we might see in Florida and what we experienced in California
Right.
or on the East Coast. This is parallel trauma. This is
One thing that was really interesting to me because I taught in the men's prison, the women's prison, and with the kids, young boys in there. Uh, couldn't shut the men up. And then you go into the women's prison, and they wouldn't even give these guys pencils.
right.
They wouldn't give them pencils. The whole you know idea of women are magical and they're really cunning and you got to
Mhm.
sit on them harder than you do for a level 4 inmate, you know. Uh, and then, we close the door and there's no men around, and I'd say, okay, let's go, let's do. And they say, I'm not gonna, no, because their words had always been used against them.
Against them. Oh my gosh, Miss
And
Tracy.
I had to work for maybe 2 years to be able to get them to trust it's okay, because their words had always been used against them.
They're still
And that's
used.
astounding to me, you know.
They're still used against us.
Yeah.
And the amount of energy, head and heart space that women have to, black women, that we have to embark on in order to select our words strategically and skillfully and masterfully, and let me make sure, and then I could speak it, and okay, no, that was twisted and altered, and
Yeah. Am I going to get gaslit, you know? And you never said that, or I didn't say that. No. And they just, nope.
But
I
I
said, okay,
never
well,
see
you were
men.
right. We'll tell story.
Okay. Oh my, I just don't see happen with men. Now I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying that I've not bore witness to it. I've not seen um, men's words just twisted, altered, and um, gaslit. To Miss Tracy.
Only in the justice, only in the courts. Y-
Okay.
there is that young guy who got arrested and put before the judge, and he said to the judge, he says, "Look it, just try me as a white man, same age, same
Ooh.
crime. That's all I request. Try me as a white man."
Hmm.
Wow. He knew what he was up against, right?
Hi. So I'm going to have us pull up another piece, and what I was encouraged to do was to pull up mine with pain, and so I was toggling between King, how would you pray, and pain. When I was listening to Donna, I think it was Donna, no, you, Miss Tracy, and you were saying you never saw your mother cry.
Never.
Um, and so as I was listening to that and hearing you say that, and just what we have taught our children and the things, I wrote pain, and I think that I had shared with you, Miss Tracy, once before, and you, Tama. I wrote pain. I was inspired to write this coming out of the showing of the movie for colored girls.
Mm.
I sat in the movie theater. We watched the movie. Whew. Me, like most, right, that watched it and observed it, I was triggered on every level, every nerve ending. And so I mean, like, so when I PTSD triggered, Miss Donna, it was like, whoa. And so I'm a very visual person. I'm a seer. And so what it looked like to me, so the movie fades right to black and it's over and it's ended, and not a soul is moved from their seat. Everyone is still sitting there, and there's silence in this theater. And I was in the IMAX theater, y'all. So it was full to capacity. Every seat was full. It was not a seat that was empty, but not a soul moved, not a woman moved. And you could hear a hush and a pin drop on carpet in that theater. And slowly but surely, I began to watch the women compose themselves, take a deep breath,
Wipe their eyes.
wipe their eyes,
Readjust their mask.
readjust their masks as they were walking out of the theater. And righteous indignation is the only way that I could describe how I felt in that moment. The image of that mother and her kids falling out of the window, remembering how my daughter was hung over a balcony by her ankle upside down as a punishment. And the thought then, what it triggered, the things that were triggered, the things. And so it wasn't long after that I wrote Pain, Strong Women of Color Know How to Do Pain, Hurt, and Disappointment very well. We wear it like product. We accessorize it daily. We're so skilled at wearing masks that most people don't even recognize that it has become a part of our daily attire. We wear it to the gym, wear it to work, wear it to school, and even wear it to church. Unfortunately, we wear it so well that it's unbeknownst to us and others that these pains, hurts, disappointments are pulling on and draining away energy and virtue from our life source. Behind every professional smile, every act of kindness and or unselfish deed, there is this foreboding sense of loneliness that lurks away at our inner soul. It is securely blanketed under success stories, accomplishments, religious regimens, schedules, and the intentional busyness of our daily routine. What we've grown accustomed to is the kind of love. I'm sorry. Every now and then, the sincerity of a tender word of encouragement, a well earned affirmation, or a gentle pat on the back will tap something in the resources of our nervous system that reaches beyond the pre authorized surfaced emotions, reminding us of our profoundly unique existence as women. What we've grown accustomed to is the kind of love that is accompanied by loyalty. What we've grown unaccustomed to is the kind of love that is accompanied by loyalty, consistency, protection, provision. You know, the kind of love you don't have to perform for or compete for or even question in its authenticity, integrity, or legitimacy. And no matter how much or how hard we try to provide these things for ourselves in the absence of its authentic, preordained created source, Revelation slaps us in the face with reality, reminding us that God did not create us to be alone. And once again, we find ourselves back at square one. Yeah. Strong women of color know how to do pain, hurt, and disappointment very well.
Wow. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Donna, I'm going to call you up next.
Oh, because I sure had a question.
Go ahead with your question.
Where do you think, where do you think, or do you believe that there is a place in time that we lost it, that we lost that sense of love, that sense of what it really looks like and feels like?
For
Or did we
me,
never have it?
for me, and I think that it might be different for for all of us because I look for the crack, and so I just recently had an experience where I felt warm and I could feel a heartbeat, and it was almost like a womb like experience.
Hmm.
I felt totally blanketed and wrapped and I felt safe. And as I was falling asleep in this posturing and feeling of safety, somewhere in going into RAM state, I woke up in tears, hyperventilating and grasping for air, like really trying to and I know I was safe. But in my natural mind, I don't know whether or not I even could fully accept it, right? Because Tama, somewhere in my adult woman, I've been through so much trauma and so much brokenness to where I don't even know whether or not I believe that safety is something that is afforded to me, or if it's safe. Like, could I really so it just felt like a womb like maybe experience, but nothing that I could in my rational, natural mind remember when. When was a time that I actually felt covered and safe on my grandpa's knee when I was under 5 years old before he died is the closest that I can remember coming to being covered, protected. He died when I was 5. So I don't know.
What about for you, Tama?
State that one again.
When have you, when do you, can you identify a time where you felt like you can identify this is where I lost that safety,
Lost all safety?
lost that sense of safety, that feeling of can I truly experience uh, real love?
Maybe the last marital betrayal, because I had invested so much in it being the antidote and balm and repudiation of the previous marital betrayal.
Mhm.
And so when you do that kind of work, when you get hit and then you say, ouch, and then you find the medicine that helps heal, and then you think, okay, dust myself off, I can do this again. And then you get socked because you think that you solved the equation, you think that you have the armor, and you think that the ground that you're walking on is solid. And then when you find out that that was rice paper, you walking on rice paper with Tim's, that's not going to work out too well. And so I think it was the final straw when I realized that I didn't have coverage. But here's the paradox. In the worst of it, in the watching things crumble and dodging the the rafters of the house I thought that I built coming down around me, there's never been a time when I was not rock solid in my belief that it exists, that my belief that it is possible, that I can see bits and pieces of it existing in the lives of women who are partnered well. I see it in myself when I realize that without partnering, that the essence has not been tarnished, and so that belief doesn't waver. But did the did the thing that I built on top of that belief, did that get blown up? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the last series of marital betrayals were the thing that said, you know what, I might not be built for this. I might not be built for this. And so when people ask me, and this is getting real personal, but when people ask me, do you ever think you'll get married again? I was like, I've been a wife. I'd like to be a partner. So I think that's the best way that I can answer that. I can pinpoint when it happened, but I can also say that it did not destroy it.
Mhm.
It did not destroy that, but because I'm gonna be hopeful. I'm gonna have my rose-colored glasses on. So
And for you, Miss Tracy?
Okay, you got a hint of it. What my template was as a child, right? Uh, you know, I was always very curious about love. I always wanted it. One good thing, that I was thinking while I'm listening to you guys that I realized today is that while I didn't have the absolute reciprocation from another, I do know that I have the capability of love. And that's okay. And that's the answer. When I was in college though, I decided a project. I thought that love was like an Escher painting. You know that the one where the hand's doing the hand, drawing the hand? That's math, right? My father was a physicist. So I thought to myself, love must have a specific equation and an approach in order for it to work. I said, why is it that men have the ability to sleep with a woman and then zip up and walk away, while the woman feels, abandoned and hurt and all that? I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to approach love like a man. What I thought men sitting in the college cafeteria, scanning the crowd. And the thing was, you got to be somebody I don't know, an absolute and total stranger. And I'm going to work my way into their life, and I'm going to sleep with them, and I'm going to walk. And I did just that. But I ended up in a 2-year relationship, and I had a kid. So,
You know, I had to come off of mute, Tracy. I can't stand you right now.
You know,
Doggone it, doggone it, doggone it.
so I said shit, and that to this day that I teach the philosophy of love in my comp classes. Ah, because I want these kids to understand, man, there ain't no answer to it. There isn't, you know. I don't think that again I will ever find safety in another person. I tell my daughters this. I said it's one thing to be heartbroken by a man, it's another thing to be inconvenienced by one. Never let yourself be inconvenienced by no man. Have your own front door. You can
Hold on.
have high aria
Let me put that in
drama
the chat.
on the rooftops and all that crazy love affair and stuff. Don't let them mess with you, or where you live. And that's the lesson I learned. My safety comes when I pay the rent. And the accomplishment that I can feed myself and my loved ones. Instead of handing my safety over and hope that somebody will give it to me, I give it to myself.
Oh my God. Now you want to talk about some wisdom? I had to drop that in the chat. That's, I mean, for real, like pearls, like wisdom. And my safety comes from now the two things that you just said. I promise you. One, and I'm learning that. I'm coming into the knowledge of that, into my knowing. I just turned 54, and it's one thing to be heartbroken by a man, it's another thing to be inconvenienced. And coming into that, I'm realizing that when inconvenience sets in, heartbreak is not even a factor. When
No,
inconvenience sets in, at that point, that's when my friend was telling me, it sounds like your lines are receding. Oh yes, because inconvenience set in. And why? Because my safety is attached to my ability to pay rent. And when inconvenience steps in and interferes with my ability to be safe and secure and provide and make sure that I'm never homeless again and all these different things, oh, baby, you best believe heartbreak, feelings, it
sure
shifts.
you
There's
can
a
have,
whole change.
yeah, you can have all kinds of ridiculous love affairs, as long as you got the rent paid and and your own front door. You go ahead, do that, all that. Fling yourself around the room like Betty Davis, if you like. That's fine. But you can't do that if you don't have your own front door. You
Oh, that's wisdom. That is some wisdom. Okay, so we're getting close to time. So I want to give us opportunity to just have another round. And so Tommy, you got a piece that you want to share?
Yeah, this is the bookend to Laini's piece. Laini's piece was the long epic ode um, to Black women, and I will usually bookend Laini Mataka with Lucille Clifton.
know.
And it's elegant and it's brief, but it means a lot of us. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whew, my God. Something has tried to kill me and fail every day.
Mm-hmm.
Tama, the next time I'm laid up on my couch, you should have brought that over and read that to me
You know,
every day.
I'll schlep all my books with me.
Every day, something has tried to kill me.
and has failed.
Failed.
And when I do a workshop with that, I tell all of my students, multiply the number of years you've been on the planet, multiply the number of days you've been on the planet. That's how resilient you are. You number in the thousands, some of us in the tens of thousands. And every day, something in this country is going to weaponize some aspect of your existence and try to eradicate it, and they failed.
Mhm.
Can do anything.
Yeah.
Mm. All right, Miss Tama. I mean, Miss Donna.
I'm going to go with something that I believe we're all familiar with, and it's a Maya Angelou's poem. So I won't even say the title, I'll just start reading. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, into a man, the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breath, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Miss Tracy, you're gonna go last. You're gonna take us. You're gonna take us out. Um,
All
this is
right.
called King, How Would You Pray? King, if you knew your queen was somewhere out there waiting for you, and God had set her apart, kept covered and waiting just for you, how would you pray for her? Would you ask God to build her inner man with confidence in who she is and who she has been created to be? Would you ask God to encourage her to not grow weary in well doing and to remind her that in due season she shall reap a harvest of blessing if she faints not? Would you ask God to send her heart messages that you are just a moment in time away and she will recognize your voice, your heart, your spirit when you encounter them? Would you ask her to surrender her to surround? Would you ask God to surround her with kings and queens that will edify, empower, and preserve her spirit, man? Would you ask God to reveal and refine her gifts, talents, and treasures that He placed within her to partner with your vision for the furtherance of His kingdom? Would you ask God to rebuke the devourer of the enemy lying in wait to tempt and entice her because of the whatever on every hand? I'm sorry. Would you ask God to forgive her for being overtaken in her faults? Would you ask God to help her forgive herself? Would you ask God to let her know that you will fight for her, cover her, and protect her prophetic anointing at all costs? Would you ask God to reassure her that you will sawabona, see her, and give her permission to be fully present under your covering? Would you ask God to remind her that you will love her as Christ loved the church? Would you ask God to teach her how to entreat other queens in the manner you would hope other kings would regard yours? King, if you knew your queen was somewhere out there in this cold and lonely world waiting for you, how would you pray for her?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hi, Miss Tracy.
Okay, I'm up. Uh, this is Uncomprehending, one of my earlier poems coming out of plays and story. It's a character voice. Uncomprehending the peril, she raised her voice in a house of brass and china, upon floors laid in Persian rug, plush in silence. Uncomprehending the peril, her face twisted in anger. A hand rested upon a hip, her head wagged. She showed her color, as Mama would say, acting up in that way she has. 40 floors up in the air, she still brought the street with her. Couldn't last long, all that primping, all that pretending, floating out of here like the Queen of England, hinkty thing, wandering off into a world without stoops, curling irons, hissing grease on the stove. Dressed as she was and putting the ing on the end of a word, there was no man or money to check her soul. Daughter showed her behind up on the hill. Heard she stood right up in that delicate red silk number he bought. She stood right up and threw scampi at his gaggan. It flew mightily, just as grits, sopa, or chitlins fly on uneasy nights, hit the wall with a grand smash and a clatter, sounding fierce, sounding hateful. The Afghan growled, making a noise like some stray, twisting his muzzle, showing his teeth. Nothing but a junkyard dog in a diamond collar. And him, he sat there gulping that air, wiping scampi off of his face, stammering and rising to his feet. Unmistakably, he called her negress, a street walking, no count bitch, a heathen, thankless whore in his house of brass and china, damned her before the trembling lace. Though coiffed, scrubbed, dined, and pronouncing the ings, that woman so revealed what he could not bridle, bursting, letting herself fly loose to bolt and rear up to trample his civilized evening. Daughter shrugged off that ratty fur, raced her hands wildly through her hair, raised her arms high above her head, screaming at the foot of that table, Lord, Lord, man, can't nobody break this soul.
Mm.
Yelled it loud, arching her back, shaking her belly, stood up there on the hill with her feet square on the ground. Heard she celebrated like she had got the spirit. The three-piece man sputtered nonsense, jamming his fancy words together, while daughter hobbled home on one high heel, hair wild about her head, with a funny little smile round her lips. And when she came home, it scared me. That wild smell in the air scared me to death.
Mm.
But she leaned in close, hugged me inside. Mom, I'm home.
My God.
Proudest damn moment of my life. I haven't read that in so
Mm.
long about me.
Oh my God.